Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down the biggest stories. And today, we're digging into a scandal that, well, it hits pretty close to home for millions of people. We're talking about the fuel in your car. So back in April of 2026, Kenya's entire energy sector was just rocked by a massive scandal. And this wasn't some minor issue. It went all the way to the top. We're talking arrests, resignations, and billions, that's billions with a B, of shillings on the line. You see, this story isn't just about high-level politics. It's about something that affects daily life for so many Kenyans. It's about what's in your tank. So let's dive in and break down exactly what went down. All right, let's get into it. Scandal at the pump. So what exactly happened here? What was the trigger for this whole crisis? Okay, so the fallout? It was incredibly fast. On April 2nd, investigators swoop in and start making arrests. This leads to this huge cascade of resignations. I mean, we're talking about the very people at the heart of Kenya's entire petroleum supply chain, the big names. Now, according to investigators, this was no accident, not at all. They allege it was a carefully, deliberately orchestrated plot. So let's take a closer look. Let's dissect the anatomy of this scheme.
And this really is the central question, right? How could something like this even happen? See, Kenya has this secure government-to-government fuel deal. We call it G2G, and it's designed specifically to stop this exact kind of thing, to prevent price gouging and shady backroom deals. So the big mystery is, how on earth was it bypassed?
Well, according to the government's own investigation, the whole alleged plot boils down to 4 key steps. And it all started, believe it or not, with creating a completely fake crisis out of thin air. And this right here, this is the why. This is the motive. Just look at the price difference. The emergency fuel was brought in at nearly 199,000 shillings a ton, while the normal G2G price is just over 140,000. That's a difference of almost 59,000 shillings for every single ton. That's huge. So, you take that price difference, and you apply it to the one emergency shipment of 68,000 tons, and what do you get? A potential windfall of around 4 billion shillings. Just like that, on one deal. Okay, so a 4 billion shilling motive is pretty clear. But how did they allegedly pull it off? Well, as they say, follow the money, or in this case, follow the paper trail.
This timeline is pretty wild because it shows you just how fast all of this happened. We're talking about a week. Just 1 week of waivers and authorizations. Everything is happening in a matter of days, sometimes even hours. Blink and you'd miss it.
And then you get to this. A quote from a leaked letter that is just, wow. The Trade Cabinet Secretary is quoted as saying, "Waiver is hereby granted on the petroleum that has high levels of manganese, sulfur, and benzene." These are literally components that Kenyan standards explicitly forbid. A waiver was granted for dirty fuel. So once the scandal broke, the government, of course, ordered this substandard fuel to be withdrawn from the system. But that's when they ran into another, even more alarming problem.
Which brings us to the obvious question. Can you just, pull one bad batch of fuel out of a huge national pipeline system? Can you isolate it and get rid of it?
Well, according to the experts, the pipeline engineers, the answer is a hard no. And the reason is something called a commingled pipeline system. Think of it like this. Kenya's pipeline is like one big stream. Once you pour something in, it just mixes with everything else. You can't separate it.
And that is the crucial point here. The second that substandard fuel entered the pipeline back in late March, it was blended irreversibly into the national supply. It's mixed in for good. Multiple industry sources have confirmed you simply cannot take it out.
So what does that mean? It means this fuel was very likely sold to thousands of unsuspecting Kenyans at the pump, especially over the busy Easter holiday weekend. Even state officials are reportedly worried that a huge chunk of it was already in people's cars before anyone even knew what was happening.
So you've got potentially contaminated fuel out there in cars. You've got billions of shillings lost. As you can imagine, the political fallout has been absolutely intense.
You have the Energy Cabinet Secretary, Opiyo Wandayi, deflecting calls for him to resign. When he was questioned, he essentially said, and this is the direct quote, "The PS in his wisdom did approve it. There is no reason to stop me." He's placed the blame squarely on his former principal secretary, Mohammed Liban.
So what happens now? Well, the officials at the center of this are facing some incredibly serious charges. We're talking economic sabotage, abuse of office. These carry penalties of up to 10 years in jail. On top of that, there are massive fines, including one that could be double the amount that was lost. And of course, there's the massive blow to public trust.
And really, that brings us to the final, lingering question. When a system that's supposed to protect citizens is allegedly exploited by the very people inside it, who really pays the price in the end? Beyond all the court cases and the political finger-pointing, you have to think, the real cost is measured in two things: public trust and the safety of every single person who pulls up to a pump.